Second point is, what is the difference between, the second point is difference between start method and T dot start method and T dot run method. Look at this. In this example, when we start a thread, we just call the T dot start method. So, we call start method. If I write instead of T dot start method, if I write T dot run method, what will happen? What will happen? So, if I call T dot run method, it is a normal method execution. So, that means it will call the run method normal. So, no separate thread will be created. So, this thread is one at that time, the only one thread will be executed, that is main thread, no separate thread will be created, that means no child thread will be created. So, at this point, up to this point we have a main thread, but when it call the start method, then there is another thread is created. But if I do not use the T dot start method, then what will happen? It will simply a method call. So, whatever the line has been executed, it will a normal first child thread 10 times, then I will get the output main thread. So, that means no concurrent execution is happening, is separately one by one method is executing. So, from this point, the one point is clear, from this difference, one point is clear, that when we call the start method, then a separate thread is created, that means it is a multi-threading, more than one thread is executing, doing their job. So, child thread is doing their job at a time, main thread is doing their job. So, main thread is creating the child thread, okay. But when we call the T dot run method, so just like a normal method call, so no separate thread will be created. So, this is the second point regarding this example. So, what is the importance? The third point is, what is the importance of start method of the thread class. So, importance of start method of thread class. What is the important? Thread class start method is responsible to register the thread with a thread scheduler with all other the mandatory activities. So, we know that if I call the start method, the automatically thread class start method will be executed, because there is no start method is written here. So, it will call, since the class is extend from thread class, it will go to the super class, that means thread class, then thread class start method will be executed, and then thread class start method will call the run method, then this run method will be executed, okay. So, thread within the start method, there are so many code has been written, predefined written. So, first the first task is to register the thread. So, since the new thread is created, so register the thread with the thread scheduler, this is the first task. So, the task is, if I write in this way, the start method task is within this start method, there are so many code is written. So, at least at most 70,000 code is already written. So, first we have to register the thread with thread scheduler. Second task is performance of all the thread. Then at last there are so many code has written, at last it will invoke the run method. run method, invoke the run method. So, when we call the start method is responsible for several activities. First one is, it may be a thread, register a thread with the thread scheduler with all the other mandatory activities. Hence, without executing the thread start method, there is no chance of starting a new thread in the Java. Due to this thread class, start method is considered as a heart of multi-threading. It considered as a heart of multi-threading. So, start method is mandatory, because if I do not call the start method, there is no separate thread will be created. So, start method is mandatory. So, within start method there are so many code has been written to register, for example, to register the thread with thread scheduler, to do some other work. So, how to maintain the performance of all the remaining code, everything, and after that it will call the run method, and when the run method will be called, this part of the program will be executed. That part of the job will be responsible for this child thread, and that part will be executed. So, this is the third point regarding this one. The fourth point is in case 6 we can say that overriding the run method is possible or not. Now, from this point we can say that overriding is possible or not. So, fourth point is overriding is possible or not. So, overriding of run method is possible or not. Suppose I have taken a class. So, look at the same example. So, I have taken a class name is my thread, and it extends the thread class, So, that is my syntax, and this part I have written a method public void, for example, run, and within run method I have given a message, for example, system.out.println no argument run, no argument. Okay. So, I have written another method. Overloading means I have written another method within this same class, public void run. So, for example, I have passed one argument, for example, int I, and within this method I have given a message system.out.println I am in int I run, then we have complete. Then again same procedure, we have just called this method. So, for example, I have written class thread demo, we can give any name, no problem, thread demo, this is my class name, and I will create the object of this class. So, my thread t equal to new my thread, and then t dot start. So, what will be the output? This main method is public static void main string args. Within this we have created my thread, then the class is completed. Okay, class is completed. So, within the public static void method we have created an object my thread t equal to new my thread, then we call the method t dot start. So, which method will be called, whether it will be called this method or whether it will be called this method. So, in this example I have just overwrite the run method of thread class, but overloading is possible or not. Look at this, overloading is possible or not. So, we have write a two method, one of the method is public void no argument method, and we have given another method with some argument. So, that process is called, we know that, overloading. So, my question is whether the run method is overloading method or not. or it is overloading possible or not? Of course it is possible, but what is the output of this program? So if I run this program, I will get the output no argument. This output will be printed. This output will be printed, no argument. Okay. Why? Because when we call the start method, it will call the no argument run method, not the overloading run method with one argument. So it is a normal method loading. So normal method loading, but if I call t dot run then int I some value, then it will automatically call this method, but no separate thread will be created. No separate thread will be created. So overloading is possible, but thread dot start class method only called the no argument run method. So this method is called, not this method will be called. So it will remain same as it is. So this method will not call. If I want to call this method, we have to explicitly t dot run, then we have to pass some value. So overloading is possible, but thread dot start method only call no argument run method. So overloaded method will be treated as a normal method. It is a normal method and we will have to call it explicitly. That is the difference between the no argument main method and with argument main method. So overloading is possible, but it will be treated as a normal method call. So if I call the start method, it automatically it will call the thread dot no argument run method, not with argument run method. So this is the fourth point about this program. And if I think, is it possible to overwrite a method? Is it possible? So we are doing the same thing. We are writing something in this here. Is it possible to override the run method? So suppose I am doing something, I have not written the run method, what will happen? So I have written like that. So I just define the class, defining a thread, class my thread, extend thread, then we just not writing anything in this class, so nothing is written. So then if I call this, look at this part. So if I use this part thread demo, then public static void main string asks thread t equal to new thread and t dot start, what will happen? So t dot start will call the run method, but I have not written any run method here. What will happen? It automatically call the thread class, because it extending a thread class. So there is no run method is here, but it will call the extending this class is extend the thread class. So it will call automatically call the super class run method, that means thread class run method. And in thread class run method is a empty content or empty body run method. So nothing is written there, so there is no output, but it is possible, So if you are not overriding the run method super class, so that is thread class run method will be executed, which is empty implementation. So there is no output actually, So the next thing is overriding start method. Case 6, overriding start method. So start method. So if I override the start method, what will happen? Suppose we have written, for example, suppose I have written a start method within this class. Okay. So I am taking class my thread, extend thread, and then we override public void start. Then we have given some output, for example system.out.println start method. And then we have another method as it is public void run. So, I have written something, for example, system.out.println run method. I have given a message to this code. So, then we have completed, and similarly we just called this thing. So, we have created my thread t equal to new my thread, then t dot start. What will happen? So, t dot start will call the run method, no problem, but when we will talk about the t dot start, which method will be called? It will call the start method. So, what is the output? Start method. What is the output? Start method. It will produce only start method only, but it will not create, another thread, because it will not call the run method, but it is not called the run method, because it will simply call this run method of this class. So, it is a normal execution of a program. It is not recommended. So, it is not recommended to override the start class, because if I override the start method, then concept of multi-threading, we are just missing the concept of multi-threading. So, no separate thread will be created, only is just a method, or only just a method call, simple method call. So, you always try to avoid overriding the start method. So, from this point we have to think, we have to clarify each of the point. We have already discussed the 6 point. So, first we cannot overwrite a start method, we just overwrite a run method of this class. So, the next thing is if I overwrite a run method, run method, so we have to write some code, or we have to give some job to the child thread, otherwise we will not get any output, because my thread class run method is a empty implementation. So, if I override something, we have to do some job, we have to give some job to perform some operation. So, for example, in this example I have just defining some job for the child thread, that is actually job, that job. So, we told you that what is thread? Thread is a flow of execution where each of the thread is responsible for performing some job. So, if job has not been assigned to the particular thread, there is no meaning of multi-threading. So, every time we have to assign some job to a particular thread.